Mr. Secretary, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Mr. Secretary, not really going to commentary, just going to throw questions at you here. Has Department of Transportation done any kind of projection as to the benefit of this legislature passing a public-private partnership vehicle, and what sort of payback could we get on that if we did in fact?
Yes, we have. Frequently people talk about public-private partnerships as though it's going to be new highways and major new things built, and that's far from the truth. Only in our major metropolitan areas would there be enough demand for the private sector to even be interested in building any type of new capacity, and then tolling to collect their interest back, their initial investment, and make their return on investment back. What we would see, though, however, is some of the ancillary parts of our business. For instance, our 511 network, which is where you can call and get information about traffic or weather conditions. A lot of states that have P3 bills, the private sector actually operates that and sells advertising, and it pays for itself. That's $5 million a year for us, but it would be offloaded from our costs. The service patrols could be offloaded in terms of selling advertising on the actual service vehicles. We actually do that at the Turnpike. I'm also a Turnpike commissioner. We don't have a cost for our service patrols on the Turnpike because we use the private sector. So, yes, we believe there's a lot of things the private sector could do, and actually probably do better than us. Even the 511, they probably have kids in T-shirts and jeans that could write an application faster than we could write the specifications on what can be done and have it on your cell phone or smartphone overnight by our own regulations. And I'm not being critical of our staff. They're great, but they have to comply with our state laws on procurement, meaning write an RFP, make it so everybody can respond, go through the process. They would just do it immediately. So there's some ancillary things that would be immediately beneficial.
That's super. Thank you. I'm a big fan of 3P. Next question. What is your take on river travel? And you know what I'm alluding to, the Allegheny River. If you're not aware, the Army Corps of Engineers shut down about 100 miles of it, the whole way from the Allegheny-Armstrong border to the New York line. Now, within that system, there are 4 integral sets of locks and dams. Many of them too small to accommodate today's modern boat traffic, but some of them big enough where we can move bulk sand, fracking chemicals, because Central West is kind of the heart of the Marcellus thing going on right now. What is your take on the importance of river travel?
I think it's huge. If you look at the barge traffic that's going on our rivers through 100-year-old locks in and around the Pittsburgh area.
Ours are only 70.
Yeah, yours are young. You got young ones. At 100 years old, if those locks fail and that barge traffic moves to truck traffic, our roadway network, which is already stressed and aging, is going to be overstressed. So we have to. That's one of our modes of shipping and transportation. We talked about rail today. We talked about mass transit. Rivers and ports is another big part of our transportation system. As a matter of fact, one of the things I strongly advocate from the Funding Commissioner report is the creation of the multimodal fund.
There you go.
Taking the moving violation money and creating a $44 million multimodal fund that gives us the ability to do multi-year planning on all the modes of transportation. We can't do that. We have to wait right now for general fund or bond issuances that occur sporadically, and we don't know how much money it is. One of the most significant things the legislature could do and the governor's office together is to create that multimodal fund so that we could actually do multi-year investments in all of our modes of transportation, not just highways.
Well, Mr. Secretary, if it gets locks 6 and 7 on the Allegheny Open, I'd like to volunteer my time. Please tell me how you need me. I need those locks open. Next question. Mass transit. Is there a way to separate shared ride from the big bus?
Well, they are separated in areas. The shared ride gets on our mass fixed route transit systems where they exist. If you look at Philadelphia, you see a lot of shared ride systems going on the fixed route because we have more fixed route service. If you separate it, it's a question of cost effectiveness, frankly.
Well, in terms of cost effectiveness, I know TACT Transit, Town and Country, Armstrong service provider. The big bus loses money. It bleeds like a stuck pig. The shared ride, however, is widely used amongst our senior population, and hence the question, is it possible to separate? And I'm looking at this as a cost-saving measure.
Yeah.
I mean, shared ride addresses our needs. The big buses drive around empty all the time. Is there a way to separate the two in funding?
Well, they are separated in funding now to some extent. Separating them further, I don't know. I can talk to my Deputy Secretary, Toby Fowler, and we can sit down with you and look at that. I think the issue, again, though, back to that whole concept is I think we have to modernize what we're doing with these transit systems. I think we have to go to consolidation. One of the issues facing these transit agencies, the big buses riding around, they would like to have smaller buses that are hybrids or electric. They make the quick recharge electric vehicles now.
Sure.
That are, we're piloting those down in BART. And I think that if we could do more of that, but it takes money to do the initial capital investment. So if you go back to it, if we could invest a one-time investment to convert many of our aging transit vehicles, which are, the average age is 30 years old, to smaller, more fuel-efficient vehicles, it's going to save us money in the long run. So again, if people have asked me at one point different times about when the liquor control, when people talked about privatizing that and some of the money going to transportation, I've often said if it did happen, if the money came to us, don't put it into highways and bridges, because frankly, if we put $1 billion into highways and bridges, you wouldn't notice it across the entire state. I'm not saying it isn't needed, but if we put the same billion into turning over that fleet and reducing it in size and putting the more fuel-efficient electric or natural gas fleet in place, then you reduce the long-term operating cost of the transit agencies. It'd be a huge benefit to the Commonwealth.
You just prefaced my next question. I assume when you reference electric vehicles, you also incorporate into that natural gas,
Absolutely.
LNG, CNG powered vehicles. Very good. Next question. Have you ever been asked by one of these mass transit agencies to help negotiate their contracts? The Port Authority concerns me. And due respect to the gentleman from Allegheny, lifetime health benefits for pensioners is not something I know the state bargained with the Port Authority, yet every year they come back to us needing more money, more money, more money. My question to you is, would it be feasible to insert PennDOT into those labor negotiations on the large mass transit systems?
It's a good question. I had a conversation with Steve Bland last week about the Port Authority situation and about the upcoming union contracts. And I don't know if it's for us to be inserted, but certainly to give an opinion about what would be important. I think when you look at that particular one, you hit the nail on the head. A lot of their costs are because of these lifetime legacy costs that no other transit agency offers. Now, one thing we talked about and have internally discussed it is if we create any additional funding for legislation, we make state funding contingent upon the fact that you cannot offer anything beyond 3 years of retirement. So that if you take state dollars for transit, that in essence, if you want to fund that, you fund it locally.
It's real easy to spend other people's money, Secretary.
Well, I think that, performance measures on what we expect if you get state money. I think that it's one of the things we've suggested, even to go so far as my consolidation point, is to say that we require consolidation studies. And then if there's a savings, now we're not saying we'll do it in a vacuum. We'll do it with the local transit agencies and the county services. But if we do the consolidation study and there's a savings that's identified, pick a number, $500,000 a year, you either fund that local, you accept the consolidation, or if you don't want to consolidate, then you come up with the other $500,000 yourself. In other words, the state will not participate in an inefficient system. So I think there's some ways to tie reform and at least studying the idea of consolidation to additional funding. Whether or not that means us being inserted into actual labor negotiations, I don't know. But I certainly think we want to assure that the state dollars that are being invested in a consistent manner across the state that's fair and equitable for all.
That's a very good answer. Finally, Mr. Chairman, I want to pay my compliments to the Secretary. We've had a couple of high-profile transportation problems in our district lately. We had some illegal aliens that were hired by a painting company painting a bridge. PennDOT jumped in on that immediately with ICE and everything. And also the work you're doing on the Route 356 bridge is nothing less than spectacular. This is a 100-ton, 4-lane heavy commercial bridge connecting 4 counties right at the point of Westmoreland, Allegheny, Armstrong, and Butler counties, and you are making it go real fast. These guys have been waiting 35 years. You literally could look through the bridge deck and see the river. And I tip my hat to you. You guys in D10 and D12 have really, really stepped up, Mr. Secretary, and I, for one, appreciate it.
Thank you, Representative. I'll pass that on to our staffs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.